Are you ready for
We're
this?
here.
Now, you look tired.
Yeah, you look tired.
I am tired. But
CJ, you look tired.
CJ looks tired. Also, you went fishing today.
Unfortunately, I did.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't had a chance to catch up.
Oh.
How was it?
It was not good. It wasn't good. I had one bite. And a lot of followers.
Yeah, it's kind of a really shitty time of the year to be fishing for us.
It's a weird one.
It's probably the worst
Very,
time.
very
it's
weird one.
very erratic. It's super temperamental.
Mm-hmm. Small windows.
Especially when you're trying to go and just do one thing. It's almost impossible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we know this from filming.
Right.
How many times in the summer and even early fall do you go out like, okay, let's film this one thing? It almost never works, right?
It's tough because you want you almost want to force feed them this one thing, and they're so stubborn. Where it's like, dude, if I would have just thrown this, or if I would have just thrown that, I probably would have just caught fish. But it's like, no, I kind of really just want to force feed them this and figure out. And a lot of times, dude, filming or not filming, it just doesn't happen this time of year. It's just very strange. But, I mean, with the lake that I went to, it's been a weird year because they're just not dropping the water, which makes things very strange. For the past, 4 years of me fishing that lake, the conditions were like, all right, around this time, the water's here, and then you can go to these specific spots and catch fish. Right now, with the water not really budging, it's like, well, all those spots that I had, they're still 30 feet underwater.
Sure. So you're relearning a lake.
Relearning it and seeing all right, well, what are the fish doing with the water being high this late, And it's interesting to see oh, so they're here. Interesting. I thought they would have been back here, but they probably would have back here at a different time or earlier, and now they've moved out, and it's just relearning a lake, which is interesting. And not just this lake, but a couple of the other lakes where the water's just risen much because this last winter we had a ton of rain and snow. So the lakes have been going through this crazy cycle of super high water and the water staying there, and just the fish are like, whoa, we haven't had this much water in a while. So it's just relearning a lake, which it kind of sucks because it's well, I've never seen it like this, so this is very new, and so it's back to the grind.
It's challenging too because you may never see it again like this.
Right.
So this is one of the challenges to lakes that fluctuate. A lot of guys live in places where their lakes might fluctuate a foot or two.
Right. Max.
We're talking about a lake right now that fluctuates as much as 100 vertical feet a season.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that this late into the season, which is usually when we're dumping water, it's actually full.
It's still full.
I can't, in my lifetime, I can't think of that.
Crazy,
I mean,
right?
That's a pretty short lifetime. It's not that long. That's not that many
You're
years.
26 or something?
But, you could go through this whole summer relearning positions and where they set up and all this stuff, and it may do you no good for that lake ever again.
Right. That's what I almost came to terms with. I'm like, well, I'm not going to come back to this lake until it starts changing, because right now it doesn't set up very well for the swim bait bite.
For what you're trying to do. Right.
I'm like, if I would have thrown like a jerk bait or something more
soft plastic right now.
They're
on reefs and humps.
Is probably the go-to.
You know what I mean?
So it's like, well, I kind of wanted to get them on a glide, and it's just not setting up for that. So it's like, all right, well, we'll leave this one alone. We'll go fish a different lake and try and figure it out at a different body
and then
of water.
Transition back to that lake, maybe a different season.
Yeah,
in the fall, as things drop, as things change.
If the water, actually does what it's supposed to do, which is drop, then because it's a fun lake, and you can go there and catch fish, and you can spend the first 3 or 4 hours there of the morning and catch 3 to 5 fish, and then go home. Boom, you're happy. It's it's a fun lake to fish when it's on and you've got them dialed, and it's like, all right, this is fun. But when it's a grind, it's like, gosh darn, dude,
it's tough, man.
It's a tough lake.
And I think this is something too that is something that everybody can learn from, is when lakes are built for fluctuation, right? When they're built to go up and down and have flow through them, those fish adjust to living in flow.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And so when all of a sudden there is no flow and there is no adjustment, so right now the lake's kind of just stalled.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
That messes with fish a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's very difficult when a lake is always moving when a lake is always moving, the fish kind of get into a routine. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's easy to kind of pattern. You could be like, it's the wrong spot, wrong thing, but I know what's going on. It's dropping, so they're gonna be. They're gonna
position in these.
But when it's stalled, it's almost like fishing for a bunch of crackheads. Like,
basically,
you don't know where the fuck they are. Right?
No
they
idea.
could be behind any bush.
Right.
Behind any rock, or they could be out there in 80 feet of water, just they're doing the same thing. Like, where the fuck am I? Like,
what's going on?
Water supposed to be coming in or coming out? Or, it's a challenging time.
It is what it is.
Yeah,
and that's just fishing. But
yeah,
it's funny. Like the bite that I had today, it came out of like this random tree, and I was like, oh, okay, if that fish was there, then all these other spots that I have with similar things are probably gonna hold them. Nope.
Yeah.
No, just a random fish. Which is weird.
Don't you love those days?
It's just weird on that lake because normally that lake, if you can find them in one spot, then you're like, oh, I can repeat this on all the other arms and spots, and there's going to be fish there. And then you go do that, and you're like, yeah, this is how the fish are. Like, it's funny, like, at least how I've seen those fish on this lake is we have on the lake, there's like, 4 major arms plus a river?
Yeah.
Castle.
Well, three huge arms.
Yeah.
In a river. Yeah.
And so, and for the most part, if you can figure out where the majority of the fish want to position, and they kind of move in waves. You know, sometimes if you find them at the mouth, then you can go to the other arm and find them at the mouth, and then do the same thing. If they're in the back, then all the other ones are going to have them in the back. And then there's also days where you fish one arm, nothing in there. You fish another arm, nothing in there. You go to the next arm, every fish in the lake seems to be in there.
Right.
And there's fucking thousands of birds, and you're like, all right, they're all back in here, and then you crack them, right? So it's like this very interesting dynamic with this lake. I used to hate it growing up. I was like, this lake sucks. But now that I've like spent, it took years because you have to fish the full cycle to understand, like, all right, at this water level, these spots are good. Once it drops 10 feet, these spots are good. Once it drops another 20 feet, the spot's good. Once it's super low, these spots are good. And you have to fish basically an entire year on that lake to figure that out.
There's some bodies of water that they're just tough. They're just hard.
Yeah.
Right? And I've always, there's some that I've fished over and over and over again, and they have just whipped my ass my whole life.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with the spot that I'm at, just saying, like, that place sucks. I don't ever need to fucking go back. Right. And then there's other places that are just difficult, but once you kind of start cracking the code, then you kind of fall in love with the difficult part, right?
Yep.
So, the lake that we're talking about, Lake Pleasant right now, you hear it referred to, like, even if people come in the store, they call it Lake Unpleasant.
Lake Unpleasant.
I think more people call it that than
100%.
Pleasant, right? Because it's a tough-ass place. But when you start figuring a few things out, you kind of fall in love with it.
It's a fun lake.
It's super challenging, but that's part of the enjoyment, I think.
Yeah,
right?
it's a very fun lake. I mean, like, I'd say for a guy that can only fish once a month, that's not the lake you choose.
Yeah.
That is not it.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Unless you have... Dude, if you've been fishing out here for your whole life and you've got a 20 or 30-year memory bank that you can pull from, and you can show up to the lake in September and you get there and it's like, yep, this looks like what I remember in September, you could use a little bit of common sense and put your boat on pad and be like, oh, look, there's a shit ton of birds over there on that bank.
Right.
Go in there and probably know how to catch them,
Yep.
right? Oh, this time of the year they eat a spinnerbait and a buzzbait and a walking bait, and you can figure out how to catch them.
Right, yeah.
But if you don't have that memory bank, it's next to impossible to fish a fluctuating lake and be consistent.
Yeah, it's tough, dude.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
And, like, that's a thing that a lot of bodies of water will have. Though it might not be a huge drop like 100 feet in a season, 3 feet on a body of water could change it.
Sure.
Right? And you can go to, the East Coast or whatever and go fish a lake, and you have no idea about those small intricacies. Obviously, the local guy's like, oh, fuck. It dropped or came up 2 feet. That's a good thing or that's a bad thing. And you just show up to the lake. You're like, all right, let's go fishing.
Right.
And so it's basically the same thing with the lakes out here. There's days when I go to, like, Saguaro Canyon where I'm like, crap, dude, it's 5 feet low. And then you go fishing and you're like, well, it depends on where the fish were positioning, because if they were in the reeds, 5 feet low, they'll push them out of the reeds, and then they'll be roaming, and then you can catch more fish that way. The water comes up, like 5 feet, then they're probably going to be in the reeds, and they're going to push back into spots. It's going to be a bit harder to get them on a swim bait, and then so on and so forth. But it's such a from 100 to 5 feet, it's a very small number, but on that lake, like when you see 5 feet low, it's like, oh my god, it's low. You know what I mean? Yeah. So every lake has stuff like that, I bet,
for sure,
which is interesting.
I would say if anybody listening is faced with having to fish a place like what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And they show up and they're like they have no clue, and it's this ass.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Probably to me the best thing that you could do would be to pick a general area.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to just start somewhere. Right?
Yeah.
So you got to pick something. So hopefully Mother Nature just gives you some kind of clue, hey, the wind is blowing over there on the left side of the lake.
Right.
Or there's a bunch of birds over there on the right side of the lake.
Yeah.
Or whatever, right?
Yep.
And pick a place and put the trolling motor down and just fish.
Right.
And go shallow, go deep, and not worry about hitting every spot on the lake.
Right.
Unless you've spent some time and you're just feeling like, dude, it's fucking dead.
Yeah.
Like, there is no birds, there's no fish.
There's no wind.
Right?
There's
yeah.
nothing, dude.
I've been staring at my forward-facing sonar for 7 hours and I haven't seen a bass, right? Then obviously it's probably a bad spot.
Right. Yeah.
But sometimes we get in this rush to just hit as many spots as we can. That's great.
Yeah.
If you have spots.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like we were talking earlier about a lake on the Colorado River that we all fish and how important it is. Like, it's a huge body of water, Lake Havasu.
Yeah. You
may fish the entire lake in a day, right? But it's a place that you might have 100 waypoints. And you roll up on a waypoint, and if you make the right cast, you only have to make it once.
Yeah, that's it.
And if you catch it, you catch it. And if you don't, it wasn't there.
Right.
And then you run to the next one. You might come back and hit it again at a different angle or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you have no starting point at all, your best
tough.
thing to do is probably just to pick an area.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would say almost every lake I've ever been to in this country, if you aren't seeing nature or you have no clue what to do, fishing around the boat ramps
is always good.
Is probably the most consistent place.
Yeah.
Like, there's always fish around a boat ramp.
Yeah.
Whether it's being released there, whether it's the structure that built the ramp.
Right.
Like, I don't think I've ever been anywhere where the boat ramp area just sucks. I mean, it could suck, but, like, there's always something.
Yeah, I've fished lakes in California and Texas and other places, but yeah, the boat ramp for whatever reason always has fish around it.
Yeah.
Whether they're suspended off or there's rock piles on either side or something. Like, luckily for me, when they dump trout, they dump it right at the ramp, and the fish know that, and so they will hang around the ramp sometimes.
Live there somewhere,
or at least, like, if there's a piece of structure covering next to the ramp, that's always a high percentage spot for me. So, like, at Soaring Canyon, we have a sheriff dock, and I always hit it during trout season. Every once in a while, I can catch a fish out of it. Or I'm like, all right, today was the day that there was a fish that was here. It was probably eating on trout that was just dumped in, and saw my bait and ate it. But it's not like that every time. A lot of times it's like, oh, there's not a fish here today, But it's crazy how, like, a lot of guys will just run as far away from the ramp as possible. I'm like, sometimes it's just good to dump your boat in on a new body of water and just go around.
Yeah.
Just pick which direction and just go.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah. Well, I'm out of caffeine.
Oh no.
So I'm cracking.
Is that what it means?
Do you want a beer? I got a yin and yang this day.
25 minutes in, that's pretty good.
Hey, I made it. See, I'm not an alcoholic, Jeff. Do you want one?
No, I need to eat dinner tonight.
Okay. CJ?
Another
You want me to throw it?
Yeah, throw as hard.
Do you want Orion or you want Cass, or what are you in for today? Oh, well, look at that.
Wow.
They're pretty good.
All right.
Who makes Cass?
It's a Korean beer.
Number one in Korea.
Really?
All right. Cheers, CJ.
Really?
Number one beer.
I might have to try it.
Cheers. Oh, yeah. You should probably tap it. Cheers, Jeff. I saw you brought your own water jug today.
Yeah. I'm not.
It's a giant silver thing
I'm not
full
sponsored
of mizu.
by. This is Ozark.
I'm gonna make you a hat with that on.
Mizu?
Mizu?
That thing.
Oh, that thing. Dude, a Mizu hat would be kind of dope.
Yeah.
Just with the kanji of Mizu.
Mizu.
That'd be kind
Just walk in. You don't even have to say anything to any restaurant you go to. You just be like, hey, sumimasen.
Sumimasen. Hi. Arigatou gozaimasu.
I like this idea, Jeff.
Make things much easier.
Well, speaking of Japanese, you had a very interesting topic
Yes.
for today.
Yep.
So I don't really know it. Dude, I like this idea of not prepping for any of these conversations, right? We haven't discussed it. We haven't talked about it. We haven't made any bullet points.
Yep.
So you wanted to kind of talk about Japanese bass fishing versus American bass fishing.
Yeah.
I don't know if versus is the right word, but
I think maybe the differences between
maybe
them
some
that we've
differences.
seen.
So I'm excited and curious to kind of go down this path with you and hear your ideas and your thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think it's a topic that's very interesting to a lot of people.
I would assume so.
You know, the store that we both work in is full of Japanese tackle.
Right.
There's a lot of Japanese influence here.
Mm-hmm.
You have a ton of Japanese anglers traveling to the U.S. to try to compete and hone their teeth on the U.S. circuits and make a living in competitive bass fishing.
Yep.
But you don't see very many American anglers going to Japan.
Yeah. No.
Right? So it creates this interesting
Dynamic, maybe?
Yeah, a question.
Yeah.
Right? Like what's happening? What is the difference between the two?
Yeah.
So before we start diving in, let me ask you, like, one thing that you and me bonded over early when we started, to become friends, get to know each other, before you even started working here, was kind of our love for Japan tackle.
Mm-hmm.
How did that become an influence for you? Like, where did that come from? Yeah, we both grew up here in Phoenix, Arizona. Right? So, what brought you to be fascinated and fall in love with Japan and Japan fishing?
So I think at a young age, I didn't know it at the time, but there were certain things that I thought were cool. I didn't realize that they were Japan inspired. So like, I watched anime as a kid. I didn't really get the connection that it was Japanese cartoons, basically. And so I was like, dude, anime's fucking dope, And then I'd play, certain video games that had very Japanese, like, cars and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, that's dope. But it didn't really click still, right? It wasn't until I got into bass fishing where I think the very first piece of media that I got from Japan bass fishing was when the world record was caught in 2009.
Yep.
And obviously it broke the bass fishing world, right? And like, oh my God, this giant bass came out of Japan. Right. And like nobody could believe it. And I was so fascinated. I'm like, holy crap, I didn't know Japan had bass and giants at that.
Right.
Too.
All you really ever heard of at that time was California.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Because California was cranking.
It was insane.
High
dude.
teens, low 20s, right?
Yep.
This is like the groupies of the world, and guys were just,
It was either California or Florida for big fish. Yep. And that was it, right? And then Japan breaks the world record, and I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea. So there was a video that one of the Japanese YouTube channels made on it, and I watched it, and it's obviously full in Japanese, but I'm like, God, dude, that fish is fucking giant. So I subscribed to that channel, and it's called Brush Biwako. And I've been subscribed to that channel since 2009. And they would always post, like, bass fishing videos on Biwako and all that. And I would watch it, and I'm like, yeah, I have no idea what the hell they're saying or anything. But, man, Lake Biwa looks dope as fuck. I want to fish there one day or whatever. And so after subscribing to Brush Biwako, I got a commercial ad of the Jackal Flick Shake. And you know how Japanese promotional videos are. They're absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
They get you hyped up for no reason.
The baits look better than you could ever make them look. The fish eats are the better than any fish eat you're ever
You're
going
ever
to
gonna
have
get.
in your life, right?
It's absurd.
Everything about it makes you want to buy. Like they probably do the best job. Well, there you go. There's the difference between Japanese fishing and American
Number
bass
one.
Fishing.
Promotion.
Promotion. They own that.
Dude, they knock it out of the park
Right.
every time.
And what's funny that you say Jackal Flick Shake
Mm.
is I think Jackal, more than any other brand, makes their baits in their promotional video look
unbelievable.
so fucking juicy.
So hype, dude.
Like every time I see a Jackal promotional video, I'm literally just jizzing on myself.
So hype.
I'm like, what the fuck? This is the coolest
like,
fucking thing ever.
I've gotta get
and then
this
I
bait.
get it,
I'm
and
like,
I can never figure out
Nope.
how to get it to do what they. You know what I mean?
No
It's,
shot.
It's the craziest.
They get me every
difference.
time.
Like there's a lot of baits where it looks amazing. You get it, and it's like, oh yeah, I kind of see what they like. How
They were
it
able to
does.
do. Yeah.
But
Nope.
like them more than anybody is like, you know, they make you think it's this, and you get it, and it's like, what the fuck?
What the fuck?
I suck.
How can I
It just
not
drives
do
me
this,
crazy,
dude?
right.
It was so funny,
Yeah.
and that video, I was like, "Holy crap! This is Japan bass fishing." It's obviously it's really not.
Right.
I mean, there's definitely some places where it's like, oh, there's a river, you can see the fish, throw your flick shake to it, hop it off the bottom, and the fish just sucks it off, and it's like, dude, I want to do this so bad. So I had my mother buy me some Jackal Flick Shakes, and then I had the
So you were a young kid at this time.
yeah, this is
Early teens, maybe, or mid-teens.
oh, this is probably 2011,
Okay. Well, I don't know what that means. I don't know when the fuck you were born.
12 years ago. I think I was 13.
Okay.
maybe.
Yeah. All right.
So yeah, really young, and I bought the Flick Shakes and then the wacky jig head as well.
Yep.
And the first day out with it, I caught a 4-pounder from one of my ponds, and at the time that was a big fish for me. So I was like, holy crap, this stuff works.
Yeah.
So I was hooked after that. And so after that, it was like, all right, well, what else? Jackal. So I started buying, like, the cover craw was next. And I was like, all right, this is kind of cool. I don't know what to do with it because I can't get it to how they do it. But I thought it was cool. And then, you know, it went over to stuff like Lucky Craft. I like the pointer. And I was like, all right, the pointer's cool. And then that got into, like, basically, I would assume after Lucky Craft, I went straight to Depths. Because that was around the time the Depths 250 was the rage. And I was, like, getting into swim baits at the time. And so Butch Brown came out with all of his videos. I'm like, whoa, there's a company called Depths. Let me check this out. And Depths at the time had, you know, the slide swimmers and the silent killers. They also had, you know, obviously the B Custom and their other baits. And I'm like, well, I'm not really into conventional anymore, so let me just stay with Depths. And then from Depths, I'm like, oh, so Depths makes baits, and then these guys also make baits. And so then it really just spiraled down into that where it opened up like, oh, Japan bass fishing is pretty legit. Like, they have this stuff dialed. And, like, it was always, like, revered as, like, much better stuff than what Americans were making. Like, Lucky Craft is better than Strike King, you know? And it's like, but why? Why are they so much better? And I didn't understand until much later on. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that Japan bass fishing is actually really hard.
Right.
You ask any bass
It's
fishing
probably the
dude,
worst fucking bass fishing in the planet.
They say it
Right.
is extremely hard. I'm
Right.
like, oh, I had no idea. All you guys show me is the promotional videos.
Right. You show me all these bass that a bait just lands and the bass just goes.
Comes
it
up
doesn't
and
even
eats it.
suck it.
No.
It just goes. Like fucking bites it.
And it's
So
like
easy.
And
Yeah.
it's like a big
Just-
one. And I'm like, oh, Japan bass fishing's easy.
Right.
You know? But you talk to every Japanese dude and they're like, oh no, this stuff is hard. Oh, it's terrible. It's
Right.
bad. I'm like, oh. So your lures have to be good
Right.
to get these bites. And like actual bodies of water, like Biwa and, you know, Kasumigara and stuff like that. And so I'm just like, oh, that's interesting. But I've never like dived into it. So today I think it's going to be fun to dive more into it and get your perspective of what you've seen and what you think as well. And I mean, I think it's going to be a good topic overall.
Cool.
So yeah, that was my introduction with Japan bass
Yeah.
fishing. Yours
Would
was Lucky Craft, right?
Yeah, Lucky Craft is really kind of the intro
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think I shared with you my first tournament
Yep.
experience and
Mhm.
just getting myself just absolutely pummeled, right?
Yeah.
And and that was kind of my first introduction to that there was this whole world there that,
Oh yeah.
you know, product that wasn't on a Walmart shelf.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
At the time. Right. So, you know, that was definitely the start of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's gone through a lot of different rabbit holes. You know, I heard you talk about depths a minute ago.
Yeah.
You know, when we opened up retail, as I mentioned, you know, in our last episode, I kind of just stocked the walls with shit that was in my boat, stuff that I used, right?
Yeah.
And Depths was one of those companies that was really coming on strong.
Okay.
Then. This is back like 2008, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They were starting to get really big in Japan, or they were big in Japan.
Okay.
But nobody in the U.S. really talked about them, right?
Yeah.
But we had an entire wall of Depths.
Yeah, that's
right?
crazy.
Slide swimmers, silent killers, killer compasses,
Oh, yeah.
all kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
And everybody would just look at it and laugh. Like, I remember, you know, this is like, we were throwing swim baits at the time. We were throwing like, pretty much our options were like 316, right? It was kind of the only hard bait. Either Castilla card head or like a 316, you know, Armageddon or something, right? Or Wake Junior. But most guys were throwing like big softs, like Talons and, you know, original
Ospreys and
Optimums
stuff,
and, you know, that kind of stuff, right? Guys would come in and look at the slide swimmers and go, what the fuck do you do with that? It's like, oh, it's a glide bait. Like, this is going to be a big thing.
Yeah.
Like, what, for a bass?
Yeah.
That's fucking stupid. And literally, dude, that shit would just collect dust. It was the same with DRT.
Right. It's the exact same
It's
thing.
exactly the same. I mean, dude, I used to have this massive wall of DRT.
Yeah.
And I would, you know, guys would come in and be like, dude, check this out. You can take the bills off, tails come out. You're like,
was
that's
too much.
way too
Yeah.
much fucking trouble. I just want to tie it on and throw it.
Yeah.
Right?
That's crazy.
And so it's crazy to see things come full circle.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
But, you know, my fascination with Japan, I've always loved the tackle.
Okay.
From a catching standpoint, right? And so for me, it was always about, like, I could literally see the results.
Yeah.
I could throw my Rogue.
Yep.
And then I could cut it off and throw my pointer or throw my 110.
Right.
And I could literally see a difference.
Yeah.
I could throw my Pop R. I could cut it off and throw my Rico. And I could literally see a difference. Like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
There's actually a lot of difference. Now, at this time that I was finding it, this is like late 90s that I started going down, you know, the JDM rabbit hole.
Yep.
There was also a lot of dog shit coming out of Japan.
Oh, really?
I mean, some terrible fucking lures,
Oh, okay.
right? So it wasn't until like the early to mid 90s that Japan really made a concerted effort to dominate production.
Okay.
Right? So, you know, Japan as a country made a decision to, you know what? We need to come together and we need to create the best product that we can possibly create.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is when, you know, like Honda and Toyota started to really like
Go to
get
the next
traction
level.
and become known as vehicles that didn't have problems.
Right.
That were made so well and so precise that they eliminated most of the problems, right?
Yeah.
And it took tackle companies a little bit to kind of get with them. There's some companies that are obviously doing it.
Right.
But there was a lot of junk coming out, the same as any other country.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Just let's just churn shit and make crap, right?
Yep.
And I think over the last couple decades, you've seen a big shift in that to where even small tackle companies in Japan have kind of taken on that persona of, well, let's have some pride. No, it's not everybody. Right? I mean, it's different things. I know we're going to go down this rabbit hole, you know, while we're talking, but the fascination for me in Japanese tackle came much later.
Oh, really?
Right?
Okay.
So it started with just seeing fish results.
Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, this lure is better than this lure.
Yeah, just flat out.
It catches way more.
Yeah.
So this is what we're going to use. Right?
No rhyme or reason.
Right. And even when I started guiding, dude, I credit a lot of like my first couple years of having really good success with clients
Oh, yeah.
to Lucky Craft.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because very few people were willing to spend $14 for a jerkbait.
Yeah.
Let alone give a client that couldn't cast a $14 jerkbait a $14 jerkbait.
Yeah.
Right? So, all of a sudden, these guys are throwing these, pointer 78, a pointer 100, a slender pointer, and they're catching fish that nobody else is catching.
Yeah.
And as much as I'd like to take credit for, I had the good spots, right? In all seriousness, I could go through community holes, places that everybody knew had fish, but I could catch them, and my clients could catch them, right? And so, I was watching the success of the baits.
Yeah.
It wasn't until much later that I really became fascinated with the culture and the ideas, and I think everybody has different connections to different places. Right.
100%.
But, obviously my brother lives in Japan, sister lives in Japan, and he's my nephew, right? So there's certainly a family connection there that's it's cool because my family's there, and so I learn a lot about, what they love about it and what they hate about it, and just like any country, right? But I shared with you and my brother last time that we were there, going back maybe 7-8 years ago. We've been in retail now since 2008, right? Started the hookup in 99. Had a retail store since 2008. Around 2015, 2016, right? Dude, I was in a super dark fucking place. I was burned out. I mean, we opened, we went from having a really good, pretty successful guide business in 2007, 2008 to putting everything that we ever made and everything that I could possibly leverage to open up a retail store. At the exact time that the economy crashed, like the worst economy crash in
perfect timing,
in my lifetime. Right.
Yeah.
And I spent the next basically 6-7 years just trying not to lose everything. Right. Forget about making anything.
Fuck yeah.
I was just trying not to fucking lose everything. Right. So, I would be there 22 hours a day. I'd fucking sleep in my truck and fucking wake up and, I'd be fucking selling minnows at 2 a.m. to guys going crappie fishing, and I'd be fucking selling, chicken livers to catfish guys going out at 10 o'clock at night, and I'd, you know what I mean? Whatever it fucking took, right? By the time it got to be 7, 8 years in, dude, I was burned, right? I was lighting at both ends. And I was in a super fucking dark spot, dude. I mean, all I could think about was suicide. Like, all I could think about was ending it. Like, I just felt like a failure. Like, everything we had was in this business.
Right.
I can't make any fucking money. Nobody's, the economy sucks. I owe so many people money, and, fuck, I got 2 kids, and, I just felt like a bum. And that was around the time that my brother, who's an amazing musician, right? And he was on, I believe he's on Sony or Columbia Records at the time. I think he's on Columbia. And he had kind of burned out and hit a wall himself in music, and he quit. And he just quit the label cold turkey. He's like, fuck you guys, I'm done with this shit. You treat you musicians like dog shit. I'm done. And he called me, and he said, dude, I just quit my fucking label. He goes, I don't know what the fuck to do, except I think the only thing to do is to start my own label and treat musicians right and do it the way I'd want to do this. Right. And he goes, but I have no team anymore. Right. Can you help me? Right. And at the time, my wife and I we had a photography business too. Right. And that was a business that we created solely out of trying to make any fucking money, because anything that I sold at the tackle store had to pay people off. Right. Had to pay debts, had to restock the shelves. Like, I couldn't take any money out of the fucking place. Right. So, we taught ourselves how to be photographers to take pictures of the tackle. We're like, fuck it, let's try to make, you know what I mean? So long story short, he said, "Can you come and help me make some music videos?" Well, fuck, dude, I had never made a video in my life, so I fucking YouTube how to make a music video, right? And literally, for like weeks, I watched YouTube videos.
Holy crap.
Taught myself how to fucking make a video.
Yeah.
Right. Went to Japan to help him film some music videos, and not to be too dark about it, but my thought at the time when I went the first time was, this is going to be really good for me because I'm going to get to go to Japan. I'm going to get to see my brother. And this is probably the last time I'm going to see him. Like, it was a real fucking dark time for me. Right. And I remember on one of the days off that we had in between filming, we just started going around to some little tackle stores. Right. And the next thing I knew, we had been doing it for like 10 fucking hours.
Jesus.
And it felt like we just started.
Wow.
And I found myself just so fascinated that these stores were doing it the way I had always wanted to do it. Right? And the next day we shot, and I couldn't wait. Like, it was the best I had ever fucking filmed anything in my life ever.
Crazy.
Because all I want to do is get done so I can go back to the tackle stores. Right? I'm like, dude, let's get this fucking filming done. Because there's according to this little map, there's a tackle store an hour over there that we could fucking go to. Right? And these weren't even good tackle stores yet.
No.
Like, we were in the middle of the country, and like we weren't like near Biwa or anywhere cool.
Really?
We were like in northern Japan and Tokyo, and you've been to you know, Tokyo shops, and it's mostly saltwater stuff. It's not really that exciting.
Crazy.
But to see it and to see the way the people interacted with the gear, and to see the way the staff interacted with the customers, and to see the way the product was displayed was so fascinating to me.
Oh yeah.
That I literally I remember just having chills. Like, I'm even getting chills right now just fucking talking about it, and I'm having the same feeling. That this is what I've been trying to do.
Accomplish.
Like, I can't fucking believe this. Like, this it's been here this whole time.
Right. Yeah.
This is what I've wanted to do. And that was the moment that really kind of changed everything for me.
Wow.
Came back, and it's like, I'm focused on creating that atmosphere. Right? So that was really the turning point for me, business-wise, because it gave me a new direction and a focus. But personally, and the reason why, you know, JDM Tackle is so big here is because it's very personal to me. Like, I literally credit JDM Tackle for saving my life, saving my marriage, saving my, you know, the dad to my kids. Right? We get to hang out here and make fun of you for not drinking beer. Right? I mean, God, I can't imagine if I would have missed that shit. But since that moment, it's just been this incredible deep dive to try to find things that just inspire me. And, you know, I don't care where things come from.
Right.
I'm fascinated by Japan, and I love finding things there because I have this amazing connection. I almost feel an obligation in a way.
Okay.
Right? But I feel the same type of excitement when any great lure comes. Right? Whether it's a small bait maker, right? Whether it's a big company, when they do things that are good and innovative in the right way, it's fulfilling.
Oh yeah.
It just ends up being that the majority of this stuff seems to come from Japan.
Oh yeah.
I think your small lure makers are probably 50-50.
Yeah.
I think there's amazing small, like, one guy garage craft lure makers in Japan, and there's a lot of amazing, you know,
big
lure
brands.
like bait makers here in the U.S. Dude, especially like the swim bait world, dude, I'm still getting fucking chills just thinking about sitting in that fucking tackle shop. Like, that was such a fucking crazy fucking experience for me. But, you know, you think of like the swim bait makers and, you know, guys that have pride in things.
Right.
And I watch a lot of these guys, and they spend years trying to perfect one fucking lure.
One lure, and
right?
that's it.
And, guys complain all the time, like, fuck, I can't believe that swim bait's $200
Right.
or $150 or whatever the price is,
Yeah.
right? But these motherfuckers literally spent years to make this exactly right,
Yeah.
that when it's done,
Mm-hmm.
it's their art.
Right. Yeah.
Like, you're not just buying some shitty piece of plastic that Rapala made you.
right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, this is literally a piece of art that dude sacrificed his family. He had this idea. He figured out how to make it. And he didn't just, like, make this can and be like, all right, cool.
Cool.
Can, right?
Yeah.
No, he crafted that to be exactly what he fucking wanted it to
Right.
be. So you get these lures and you get a story.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And we kind of touched base on this in our last episode about the story of things, right? Every bait has a story, and when you learn how it moves, where it moves, what it does, you almost get insight into the artist the same way as like when you read the lyrics to a fucking track.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like
You figure out what's going through there.
Dude, I remember the first time, remember Kendrick, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers?
Yes.
From last year,
Yeah.
right? A fucking album blew my mind, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think you and me probably listened to that album like 100 times the first month it came out, right?
Yeah, it was a lot.
I remember the first time I listened to it, I was like, fuck, dude, this album's dope.
Yeah, it's
but the
fucking
second time I listened to it, I read the lyrics, and I was fucking crying like
Yeah.
a baby. Like, I think I even called you and was like, bro,
Yeah.
you got to, dude, I just cried to this song. You're like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I mean,
Yeah.
right? You get insight into the mind of the artist
Mm-hmm.
when you get real things,
Right.
right? And I feel like from a tackle side,
Mm.
even most of the big companies in Japan have that thought process.
Right. Yeah.
Where it's okay to take our time. It's
Mhm.
okay to put some legit R&D. Let's build something that's actually necessary.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's build something where there's actually a gap, not just build it for the sake of having
building
it.
Right. Yeah.
Which sadly seems to be the case over here with a lot of our big companies.
100%. Yeah.
And that's one of the challenges that I think this industry as a whole faces is how we deal with kind of knockoff culture, lack of pride culture,
Right.
do it all for the money.
For the money, right? Yeah.
And it's a huge money grab.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's like going into whole innovation it's very strange here where, and there's definitely some of it in Japan. Like, it's not just an American thing here, but it does seem like when something good comes out, a lot of people want to get onto that train as well. Not make things for their own fishing style. Right? So there's a lot of guys, when I first started getting into swim bait fishing, the swim bait makers over here, they were making baits to fill gaps in their own fishing. So, there was guys like Andrew Hinkle, for example, like the 250 came out or whatever, and that was 10 inches and it had a certain swim, but Andrew wanted to make a certain glide bait that was different. And that's when he came out with like the Hinkle trout. It was bigger, it swam completely different, and it filled in a gap that was needed.
Yep.
Right? And then you have Mike Gilbert, a Working Class Zero. He wanted to have a true weedless bait that formed around the hook of a beast hook, where it wasn't like this huge gap like you would get on like a trash fish or a talon or whatever back in the day. And then he made that and filled a gap.
But understanding, not to cut you off, but this is getting back to the point I was making about understanding the story, right? So I happen to know a little bit of Gilbert's story because we're friends.
Right. Yep.
But Gilbert really is particular about things hanging off of his bait.
100%. Yeah.
So he's a trophy bass fisherman that hates the idea of a hook hanging off a bait,
Yep.
a snap hanging off a bait,
Yep.
like anything hanging off a bait that's not the bait.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you get a battle shad, for instance, right? You can understand his story. Yes, it's a paddle tail.
Yeah.
There's been paddle tails before.
Yeah.
We're not talking about product category startups.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because in I don't want to necessarily go down, is it a knockoff or is it not a knockoff?
Right.
Because I think
Right.
that's a whole other
That's a whole
separate
nother thing.
episode. But I think the most important thing when you look at baits is, does it have a story that is meaningful, or is this just another fucking thing that's watering down the market for the sake of a money grab?
Right.
Yeah. Right? And that's probably the simplest question to ask yourself about any product that you see.
Any product. Yeah.
And then you have your answer.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you've got these companies, these fucking bullshit companies, like a Berkeley, for instance, right?
Especially a Berkeley.
And I'm not necessarily trying to be angry or single anything out, but I think the industry needs to start paying attention and figure out what to do with the situation we're in.
Right.
You build a pro staff. You build a very highly paid pro staff.
Very.
Right? You need to make your money back.
Yes.
Right? If you're paying out, let's say, $500,000 a year or $1 million a year in pro staff, well, you got to make back millions to pay for that, right? So every year they go to their pro staff and say, hey, what baits are you using now that we need to make, or what do we need to do?
Right.
And they will literally hand them, like, dude, we're all catching them on this mag draft.
Right.
Right? We need a mag draft.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We're going to make a mag draft. Right? And it's really about a money grab most of the time.
100%.
It's a straight fucking knock.
Yeah.
Just to have one more thing so that Berkeley can sell it,
right,
or Company X can sell
right,
it, right?
Yeah.
Here comes the lawsuit.
Yeah.
Right? But, this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right? When you get it, there's no story. The story is that this pro staffer used the OG.
Yep.
And now Berkeley's going to try to make money on it. That's the story. If that's the story, it's a knockoff.
Right.
Right? When you're listening to you tell stories about Hinkle and Gilbert and, down this path, these are artisans that have something in their head that they're trying to create for a specific purpose.
Right. Yeah.
That's different.
It's completely different. And it just sucks because we see most of these knockoffs coming from the American side, taking from small Japanese brands. And we've been seeing this, unfortunately for the past few years now. And you don't really see, like Depps taking a Berkeley Chigger Crawl and like, oh, thank you, and winning a show in Japan. It's like Japan does seem to have a lot more pride in what they do in fishing. And, for the most part, it does seem like Japan has always had a foot on the American side of building high quality baits that outshine everything else. And then the Americans find out about this and then they just take it. And it's weird how it's like, why is there this gap of innovation with Japan bass fishing and American bass fishing? And one of the things I think about is just how hard it is to catch a bass in Japan, where they have to. While American bass fishing, for the most part, it can be pretty easy, especially like East Coast. There's days where guys are like, oh, we only caught 20 fish today.
Right.
And
20.
And you're like, holy crap, dude. Like, I'd kill to catch 20 fish.
Right.
Right. And, there's just more, foreign ponds or smaller acre lakes that are much easier. There's more bodies of water.
Bass fishing is definitely, no question. I don't think anybody on the planet would argue this. Way better in America
Oh, 1,000%.
than it is in Japan.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think there's any question about that.
So I think in that sense, the American companies, they don't feel that they need to go above and beyond to innovate something. They're like, we'll just make another generic craw. Why would it be different? These fish will eat anything.
Yeah.
That fish will eat a Berkeley craw. It'll eat a Zoom craw. It doesn't matter.
Now, let me just preface. We are absolutely 100% speaking in generalizations.
Right. Yeah.
We're not speaking about every American brand and every Japanese brand.
Right.
There are certainly Japanese brands
Right.
that are knockoff artists.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there are certainly American brands that are trying their best to innovate and
100%.
making amazing things.
Right. Yeah.
We're talking about the generalization of the necessity to innovate over here versus let's just keep making stuff and throw it on the shelves and grab some money because really any of it could probably work.
Right. Yeah.
Over here.
That's like the biggest thing is just innovation, and a lot of it just seems to be almost every year or every couple of years, we see something cool and new from Japan, while the American guys are just always constantly just trying to do the whole cash grab. And it's like, dude, it kind of gets old, like, and what you've said in the last podcast is that tournament fishing really does push, to push bass fishing, and like, all right, we've got to make something to be better so I can win more money in the tournament, or pros can win more if we make this. And I think that the tournament scene, it's good in that sense because it kind of pushes innovation. Like, all right, so what can we do better? But it almost seems like it's just dropped off in recent years, I feel like, where it's like, oh, well, all the great new and innovative baits, all the Japan baits.
Well, I think here's what happens, right? And this is just speculation.
Mm-hmm.
We talked yesterday a little bit about the difference between competitive bass fishing and fly fishing, and why, whether you like competitive bass fishing or not, how important it is that it exists for the growth and the driving of our industry, right?
Yeah.
What I meant by that was, I love fly fishing, right? I was a fly fishing guide when we opened retail. We were half fly fishing, half bass fishing.
Yeah.
Like, I love fly fishing, and this isn't necessarily. I can diss on some fly fishing because a lot of them are elitist fucks.
Right.
But this isn't that attack. What I'm saying is, a guy 50 years ago threw a Parachute Adams and a Prince Nymph and a Copper John and a Woolly Bugger.
Yeah.
A guy now is throwing the same Parachute Adams, the same Prince Nymph, the same Woolly Bugger.
Yep.
Like, I'm not saying there's zero fly innovation, because certainly there is.
There's some
right?
things, yeah.
There are obviously guys that are going to hand tie their own shit. There's some companies that try to make, articulated things or walking things, or, especially with fly fishing over the last, probably 15 years, trying to figure out how to become a bass fishing place too, right? Like trying to create, topwater lures that walk, or, baits that flip, or Senko type flies, right? But day in and day out, there's no need to really innovate beyond what they have already, because there's not a competition in regards to money on the line. When you put money on the line, innovation has to happen, right? You need some kind of edge, right?
Yep.
And that's what tournament bass fishing does for the bass fishing industry. What I really think we're seeing now is we're seeing a COVID effect still in production.
Oh, really?
Right? So when I don't think we've even talked about this. When you fished Lake Biwa a few months ago, right? Did you fish any like flats or structure areas where there was just like 1,000 boats on a spot?
There was a place out in front of our hotel, actually, and it was kind of just like a big rocky flat.
Yeah.
And there was like 7 boats every morning on it.
On one little tiny flat.
It was small.
Right.
It was small.
I remember the first time I ever fished Lake Biwa,
Yeah.
I was driving a train, to the marina, and I'm looking out, and I'm like, man, I was starting to count. I'm like, dude, there's like 600 fucking boats. I'm like, I wonder what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I got there, and I met, Sugi, and we started going out. I'm like, hey, what are all those boats doing? And they're like, oh, yeah, that's a good spot. I'm like, a good spot. And we went over there, and we pulled up. And, Jeff, I'm not fucking exaggerating, right? There was literally hundreds of boats on a flat break.
Yeah.
And we're talking about a flat break that's maybe half a mile long. We're not talking about a flat break that's 20 miles long down a whole river channel.
Right.
We're talking about just one spot.
Yeah.
quarter mile maybe, right?
Ridiculous.
And literally the play was find a big enough area.
Yeah.
Like, we came off pad and we started idling around boats. There's guys casting or idling around the cast, and we find a hole big enough to where we could kind of position the boat and be able to cast. Like, if I wanted to make a far enough cast in any direction, I could have thrown it across a dude's head. Right? The play was to just get yourself a little space and make short little pitches, and somehow a bass had to swim past 500 other fucking baits, make it to the grass patch that was below my
Yeah.
boat and eat my bait.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy fuck, is this like every day? This is like on a Tuesday,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like, is this like this every day? And you're like,
Sure
oh yeah,
shit
this is
it-
normal.
sure
and then
shit
you
it
look
is.
down the lake and there's another flat,
Mhm.
and there's another spot, and there's another spot,
Yep.
and there's literally thousands
Oh yeah.
of guys a day
Easily.
fishing one fucking lake
Yeah.
that kind of sucks anyways.
Yeah. It's a tough lake
Because Japan has a catch and kill
on that lake,
rule,
which is
right? So you're
interesting.
supposed to kill every bass that you catch because they
Yep.
want bass gone because
Got it, yeah.
they're going to eat the native species, right?
Wow.
So you're talking about a lake that's getting harder and harder and harder because
Yep.
there's less and less fish,
Mm-hmm.
more and more and more people.
Yeah.
They have to innovate
They have to.
because, I mean, dude, you make the greatest fucking lure of all time.
Right.
Like the cover scat is
Yes.
a perfect example. When the
Yes.
cover scat came out a couple years ago, I remember when Kenta was in here.
Yeah.
He thought that like 80% of bass caught on Biwa that year were caught on the cover scat.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was
It's like,
a
are you fucking
crazy
kidding me?
amount.
Like 80%
It was
of all fish the
unbelievable.
whole year. He's like, dude, it's the only thing anybody throws. You throw a cover scat, they eat it, right?
It's so
Well, think in
insane.
1 year,
Yeah.
you're talking about thousands of cover scats a day
A day, dude.
that they're seeing.
Oh,
a
yeah.
day.
Yeah.
So let's call it 1,000 a day.
Yep.
At the end of the year, you're approaching 500,000 cover scats
Mm-hmm.
that you saw. You're probably not going to eat a cover scat again
For a while.
for a while.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So it's time for the next,
next thing.
innovation,
Yep.
right? And
Yeah.
this is why it's so fast and there's so
Yeah.
much churn because fishing sucks ass over there.
It's not good.
It's tough.
It is not good.
And it's more crowded than any place that, I mean, dude, we fish a local tournament, you pull up to a structure spot and one guy's on it,
You're pissed.
you lose your shit. You have
you're
words. You're
so
like, hey,
mad.
motherfucker.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is my fucking spot,
Yeah.
right? He's like, fuck you, this is my spot. I mean, imagine pulling up and there's 500 fucking guys.
And you gotta squeeze in.
And you got to somehow
'Cause
battle
this is
yourself
where you
in
catch
there.
your bass.
And
You don't catch
everybody's
your
just
bass
like, yeah,
anywhere
yeah,
else.
come. I mean, this is what we do. Come on.
And there's no other place you catch your bass on the lake.
Right. If all the grass is in one area, guess
That's
what?
it.
2,000 boats are going to be on that fucking spot. Right. So, they have to innovate
Yeah.
out of necessity to keep catching.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
It used to be the same here,
Mm-hmm.
where innovation would come from, tournament guys.
Right.
Like, hey, I need something hot.
Yes.
But I think what's happened is the COVID effect. We had such a huge increase in people come into fishing.
Right.
New
Huge.
anglers come into fishing.
Huge.
And then anglers that were already into fishing, expanding
Oh yeah.
their fishing.
Yes.
Right. That it seemed to be just this race of every brand to put something into every possible product category they could.
Easily. Yes.
Right? We don't have a Senko. Let's make a Senko.
We have to.
We need a
Senko.
Senko.
Yeah.
We don't have a drop shot worm. We need a drop shot
Just
worm.
make it. Just make it.
Just make it. Just make something.
Yeah.
Put it in the package.
Boom.
Throw it on the shelf. We need a drop shot worm.
Done.
Oh, we don't have a walking topwater bait with
Make it.
a knock in it.
Boom.
Fuck, we need that.
Yeah.
Let's put that up. Right. It's just become this race, and if
Mm-hmm.
you look at these brands, it's literally just a race to have something in every category.
Right.
So that they could take advantage of this influx of people.
Yes.
Because it's a pure fucking numbers game.
That's what it is.
If they make enough baits
Mm-hmm.
and they put it on enough shelves across all the fucking country, they're going to sell X amount of fucking
Right.
baits.
Yep.
And that'll pay for this and that'll pay for that, right? But all it's doing is it's putting one more fucking bait in the category
Right.
that we don't really need.
That we didn't need.
One more fucking jig.
Right.
One more square bill that is exactly the same as the 1.5 that
Right.
there's already 10 knockoffs of. One more jerkbait that's exactly the same shape as a 110 that's even colored the same and named the same.
Name the same. Yeah.
Right? Let's just throw it up
Let's
there.
do it.
Let's go. We need a
Let's-
jerkbait.
We need it.
Yeah, we might as well knock off that one, right? It's going to be interesting to see what happens as the COVID effect goes away.
Trickles away. Yeah.
if companies get back to actually trying to create something, and I'm not saying every company's,
Right.
I mean,
Again,
dude, there's some
all
companies that are really
generalization.
trying some crazy shit. Like Z-Man comes to mind.
Yes, 100%.
Dude, they like the Hellraiser last year.
Hellraiser. Yeah.
Like it's
ridiculous.
like, I don't know what the fuck this thing is,
Let's-
but hey,
let's do it.
Hey, you're trying something.
Yeah, I like it.
Like, you know, so I mean, there are companies that are still trying to create innovative things, right? To stay fresh and to
Yes.
keep new ideas coming out. And sometimes new ideas are great, and sometimes new ideas are flops.
They flops, right?
But you know, new ideas are important.
Very.
The crushing thing is when you take something and you steal something from a little brand.
Yeah, small
right?
brand.
And we started talking about the swim bait guys,
Right.
right? I know how much blood, sweat, and tears Gilbert puts into his baits
Fuck.
because I talk to him all the fucking
Right.
time,
Yeah.
right? So you're talking about years worth of time
Yep.
into a bait. Tens of thousands of dollars, realistically,
Easily.
right? Maybe even six figures of dollars.
Yes.
If you have a true amount of pride in the product and want it to be exactly right, you may scrap the whole process a year in and be like, no, you know what? It's just not right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat it. I'm gonna scrap it. I mean,
Yeah.
dude, we talked to Nishini about things that they've been working on for 6-7 years.
Insane stuff.
Right?
Insane
I mean,
stuff.
you're talking about almost a decade, and they won't release it.
Yeah.
Because
it's not right.
It's not right.
It's not right.
Right? This is where the future of fishing is going to come from. Are
Easily.
these guys?
Right.
Right? The future of fishing isn't going to come from these monstrous corporations that are stealing ideas and just throwing them on shelves and undercutting and just whoring out the market.
Yeah.
Right? That's how innovation dies.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
If we want to be fishing forever,
Right.
like what you said,
Yeah.
right? And I'm going to be 80 years old and still see some dope ass shit on the wall.
Yeah.
And I want my kids to grow up and be able to go see some dope ass shit, and their kids to be able to see some dope ass shit and not see everything the same bullshit name brand, big box brand that's just a knockoff of the other big box brand, and it's just all this like garbage.
Yeah.
Then somehow we have to protect those little brands. Right?
Yeah.
Those innovators.
And it's tough.
Yeah.
Because they're a small brand and they don't have much voice, and there's nothing you can do to this giant corporation.
Right.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I mean, to go kind of back on topic, one of the things that, you know, you and I have talked about is Japan bass anglers coming to America to chase the dream of being a tournament mate. Which it's cool that they leave Japan behind, and some of them will come out here alone, know almost zero English, and chase the dream of being a professional bass fisherman on this side of the world.
Yeah.
But it's not the opposite. An American guy won't go to Japan to fish a bass fishing tournament out there. Obviously, I'd assume it has something to do with size of tournaments as well. And then
Fishing sucks ass.
that's big too.
Right? I mean, it's hard if
Yeah.
you're a tournament guy in Texas.
Yeah.
Do you really want to go 5,000 miles to fish a
Right.
place where you're probably not going to catch anything?
Right. And obviously, America does have the highest elite series of tournament fishing. Right?
This is the big leagues.
Yeah, this is
And,
it.
and this is no diss against, JB Top 50 or any circuit that Japan has.
Right.
The big leagues is here.
Is here.
Yeah. Bassmaster,
Mhm.
the Elite Series
Right.
or, MLF, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Those are the
Top
big
dogs.
leagues,
Right.
right?
And it's just like the NBA versus some like the G League or D League and stuff
For sure.
like that, where it's
Right.
like it's great, but an NBA player is not going to go play in the G League. You know what I mean? He's
Right.
not going to do that.
Yeah, even if he thinks that's the coolest fucking country in the world.
Yeah, he's not gonna do it.
Greece is dope as fuck, but
Right.
I'm not going down
Yeah.
a level to play. I'm already in the best league.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's interesting that we've had quite a few of those guys come in, and you hear their story and what they've done to get here, and it really is like, oh, like that's cool. I don't know if I could have done that. Yeah, I don't know if I could do the same. Like just throw it all away. I'm like, all right, peace out. I'm moving 5,000 miles over there and just go fish bass fishing tournaments
Right.
on places that I've never known before, or I don't even know the language. Like,
Right.
it's quite impressive that the Japanese are willing to do that to chase the dream. And what we've seen so far is they're really good.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
really
their
good.
technical ability is super honed,
Very.
right?
Yes.
And again, it's a lot out of this necessity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Taka said it really well the other day when we were talking to him. Is that a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times when you pull up to a tournament lake in Japan,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we've been talking about Biwa, but there's many places that
yeah.
hold big tournaments.
Yep.
It's less about the area and more about the bait.
Mm.
Because again, they've seen so many fucking baits,
Right.
right? It's like,
Yeah.
what is going to be the lure today,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like, what's going to be the thing that they haven't seen
Mm-hmm.
that's going to present itself right in this condition?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they have to hone their technical abilities. Plus, they got to find the hardest to catch. They got to catch the hardest to catch bass in the world.
Right.
If you can figure out how to do that, and then all of a sudden you come to fucking Great Lakes or something, it's like, holy shit, fuck yeah. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, so, they're coming here with a very honed technical ability to find fish, but catch very difficult to catch fish.
Very. Yeah.
And if you watch a lot of them, very few of them take on a power fishing role.
Yeah. Very few.
Right? So, I mean, very few of them are just going and just flipping and punching
Right.
and John Coxing it, for instance, right?
Exactly.
A lot of them are doing mixed bags of finesse and power, but their power even is maybe offshore power.
Right.
Or it's secondary power.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're always like, I think it's just in their minds to look for shit that's out of the way, maybe a little bit different.
Right. Yeah. It's funny because when me, Julius, and Taka, when we went out fishing, Taka was like, "Oh, I'm so used to fishing like 3 pound on my drop shots," and Julius was like, "Oh no, like our lightest is like 8 pound, maybe 6 pound."
Right.
And Taka's like, "Oh no, that wouldn't work in Japan."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Holy crap! It's like that." And like, I remember when Kenta came, and this was very fascinating to me. I loved Kenta. He's so
Right.
cool.
Yeah,
He's one of
for
those
sure.
guys that is a power fisherman, I'd say.
100% a
And
power
it
fisherman.
works pretty well for
Yep.
him overall. But when he was here, he was telling us like, it's either in Japan you throw something like this, or you throw something like that.
Right.
There's no in between.
Right.
And I'm like, what do you mean there's no in between? And he's like, well, the fish, they know what a lure size is nowadays because they see the same size lure, like you said with the cover scat.
Right.
When they see 500,000 of those things, they know like, all right,
A 3.5 to
A
4
3.5
inch
inch-
bait. I've seen this
I've se-
thousands of times.
that's not real.
Right.
Because the size.
Right. No way that's a real.
Right?
Right.
So then you would have to downsize or throw an 8-inch cover scat.
Right.
Right? Something just
Holy
absolutely-
shit. That's innovation. An 8-inch cover scat.
It just hits them in the head,
Hey.
knocks them out. They
Bleep-
float up.
Bleep that or there's going to be a power bait version of it.
And so that was very fascinating. I'm like, wow, so the fish have been programmed like that because of how difficult it is. And then the other thing that he also said was like when he frogs is he'll make the same cast over and over and over again to the same pocket. And his reason is like, well, he knows that there's fish in this pocket, but if you make the one cast, the fish are like, it sounded like a cast. I'm just gonna let it go by and see what happens. I knew it was a cast. And then you hit them again, they're like, probably another cast. But then you keep hitting them over the head, and they're like, a normal lure would not do that many times. And then he gets bit on like his 11th cast in
Right.
the same hole.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there like,
And a
that-
lot of what he was talking about was even things like frogs.
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And that completely changed my way of thinking about
Yeah.
frog fishing, listening to him.
Yeah.
That, so many times you just think, especially when you're power fishing, you think like, you're going to get them to react the first time.
Right.
Or
First
they're not
flip,
there.
and then you move on.
Right?
and
You
then
made,
move
oh
on.
yeah, it's perfect. Nothing is there. Cool. I'm
Boom,
going to throw
move
over
on.
here now.
Yeah.
And he's
Yep.
like, oh no, I'll throw. He was talking about like maybe 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, it was insane.
Making the same cast.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh no, I'll make the same exact cast across the mat and pull it through. And this next cast and the next cast and the next cast.
And he's like, eventually.
they'll eventually think that's not what everybody else
Normal,
is doing
yeah.
and come and look. And then, like
One
you
of
said,
them
just
will-
random fucking cast, you catch one. It's like,
It's like they have to do this to catch a bass in Japan.
crazy. Yeah.
And like learning all of this, it really puts in perspective of like, oh, dude, like they're on a whole different level of thinking than most of us American guys are. Like, I don't know a single American guy who does that.
Right.
I don't know.
I think the closest thing in my time that I've seen to that would be like figure eighting stuff. Right? And most guys lose interest. I just don't have the stamina for it. Like 4 or 5 figure eights for me and my shoulders are burning. I'm like, fuck this. Like, I'm good not catching that fish. But, you see some of these guys that are starting to take, like, what Shimada has figured out how to do.
Yeah.
And they'll literally figure eight for minutes at a time until the fish just loses his fucking mind and just eats it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Other than that, I can't really think of anything where guys are like, I'm just going to make the same fucking cast over and over. Maybe structure.
Maybe.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I know this rock eventually is going to pull fish. I'm just going to throw the same fucking rock for 8 hours, and then eventually a school will come through and catch. But very rarely on, like, a reaction standpoint are you making the same cast for that long of a time. Yeah.
And I think another thing that Kenta was saying, like, all of our fish just, most of the part, you're always looking for a reaction bite. They don't just eat off of just plain slow.
Yeah.
And so I think he was like, it's either you fish extremely, extremely slow, or you fish extremely fast and get the pure reaction. And when you watch Japan bass fishing videos, that's basically what it looks like. Like, they're either fishing something super fast, like Shimada Satan, when he's throwing a ball and he's like, 8-trap. Like, there's no stopping, and the fish will come up and react and eat it.
Yeah.
It looks ridiculous, but it just works out there because you're basically just trying to trigger in that fish's mind, like, all right, I just got to kill this thing. I'm going to eat it because it's going crazy. Yeah. Where when they do throw the very small natural baits, it's so slow.
Right.
I mean, you talk about the do-nothing baits, the eye-motion baits on Biwa, on those big flats. They'll throw out just tiny little do-nothing bait and just fucking
1/8 ounce, 16th ounce bait,
super light, and they shake it and they catch double digits on it.
Right.
Because they come up to the surface, look at it, and then they eat it. And it's like, this is what you have to do.
Yeah.
To get a bite on that lake. And you're just sitting there like, do I really want to go and fish that lake?
Are you sure you want to move there, Jeff?
Yeah. And so it's been very fascinating to learn more about Japan bass fishing and how they think about bass fishing, what their community is like versus our community and what we think, and it's really cool. And I'm glad to be able to talk to more of the Japanese guys as they come through to the shop and get more insight on, like, oh, where do you like to fish? Oh, you like to fish this lake, or you like to fish like this and this. Oh, you do this instead. And so for the most part, there isn't a lot of similarities between, like, my style of fishing and some of, like, the guys over there. And I'm like, well, maybe I should adopt some of their stuff, and it would be cool to try and teach them some of the stuff that I've learned, especially when it comes down to swim bait fishing, because, I mean, obviously I want to fish Lake Biwa, and when I fished Lake Biwa back in March, it's no joke the amount of people fishing, either from a boat or from shore. Shore is even worse.
Yeah.
I mean, shore is ridiculous. And obviously, you know, as a swim bait guy, I like fishing like the DRT stuff and the depths and stuff like that. Well, everybody fishes that stuff over there.
Right.
So it's not unique.
Right.
Like over here when I throw a K9, I'm like, I'm probably the only guy on the lake today throwing it. Over there, it's like, that guy's throwing a tiny class. That guy's got a K9 on his rod. That guy's got a K9. Like, so it's like those fish are seeing that, you know, over and over again. So it's like, all right, what can I do differently, or what can we do differently? And so, you know, I try and talk to some of the Japanese guys like, hey, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And sometimes they're like, oh, we've tried it. It doesn't work. And it's like, all right, like, it's cool to see the dynamics between it. And some stuff works that work for them over here, and some of the stuff just like, this is not going to work.
Right.
Dude.
Yeah, no way it's going to happen.
Ridiculous, right?
Yeah. Hey, Jeff, hold that for a second. I'm out of beer.
Oh, no.
I want to grab beer.
That's terrible.
All right, dudes. I don't mean to interrupt you, but
the beer.
If I'm going to be sitting here, I'm drinking.
The beer was
That's
necessary.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
you know, it's this or Mizu, and you know,
is Mizu
I'm not a loser. I'm drinking beer.
Watch this crazy maneuver.
Yeah. Oh, look at CJ. Oh, look at him.
Flexible.
Go. Man, if people could see,
flexible.
if people could see our makeshift,
there should definitely be
deal.
I think I have a video there. I'll punch it in.
I don't think OSHA should ever see what we're doing here.
No, there's so many cables.
Yeah. So, you know, you're talking about learning from Japanese anglers and Japanese anglers learning from you, right?
Yep.
And a lot of what we've talked about today has kind of been about what Japanese anglers do so well.
Mm-hmm.
But I've watched now, like I watched when we went to DRT,
Yeah.
and you were talking with a lot of those guys and sharing some of your insight on baits, and techniques and stuff. Dude, they were fascinated, right? And they were really learning a lot from you.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not they take it and apply it, I don't know.
Yeah.
But they were super interested.
They were very interested
that you were doing things completely different.
Right.
When Taka was here a few weeks ago, he told me he had never thrown a free rig on a spinning rod.
Yeah.
He looked so confused. He's like, I can't believe you guys throw a free rig on a spinning rod.
Couldn't believe it.
I'm like, you've never done that? He goes, no, I'd never even thought about it.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much, because our fishing styles are so different.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's so much that both places can learn
1,000%.
from each other.
Yeah.
It's understanding and finding those lanes of wanting the growth.
Right.
You see a lot of resistance to it.
1,000%.
Right.
Because
So, I mean, you hear a lot of both sides. Like, you hear a lot in Japan, like, oh, that's American. Like, that's not, like,
that's not going to work
It's never
here.
going to work here.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you hear it over here, like, oh, that stupid little Japanese lure. Like, I'm not going to throw a stupid little thing. That's not going to work here. Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of resistance that immediately just
written off.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But there's so much opportunity.
Yes.
There's so much good knowledge that we get as American anglers.
Yeah.
Because in complete honesty, we catch way more fish.
1,000%.
I would bet a mid-level tournament fisherman in the United States has caught more fish than the highest level tournament fisherman in Japan.
1,000%.
So we have skills here that, just from the pure standpoint of numbers, it's like, you have to do something 10,000 times before you become a master, right? I mean, dude, can you landing 10,000 bass in Japan? I can't even fucking fathom that.
I think I'd be dead.
I think the best trip I ever had there was 3.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know how you did that.
Right. I think that was the best trip I ever had. Right. So, not saying that dude, I suck, obviously. Right. But I'm just saying, like, dude, it's not easy.
No.
Like,
yeah.
So there's a lot that we as American anglers have edgewise.
Yeah. 1,000%.
Right? Especially when it comes to big fish. And you even hear it on like elite side. Like, you hear, Takumi Ito talk about.
Oh, he loves small fish, finesse.
Right, finesse and small fish.
It's so funny.
And when you get around big fish, he's so intimidated.
Yeah.
And the reason he's intimidated is because
not
that's not in his mastery.
Right. Yeah.
It will be. Dude's way too fucking good for it
he's
not to be.
such a stick.
Right?
Yeah.
But right now, that's foreign.
Right.
And you and I have spoken about, we talk about big fish all the time,
right,
because that's your whole fucking life,
yeah,
right? Landing and hooking an 8+ pounder, completely different.
Wildly different.
Than anything between 1 and 7 pounds.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying a 5 pounder is not a big fish, but a 5 pounder and a 9 pounder are two very different animals.
Very.
Right?
Yeah.
Hooking, fighting, landing, understanding what they're going to do, understanding what surges mean, what different pulls mean. That's only stuff that you can get through practice.
Through experience.
We just get a lot more opportunity.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Here.
1,000%.
I'm saying there's not. I mean, dude, there's way more giants, I think, in Japan. Well, let me ask you. You're a giant chaser.
Yeah.
Do you think there's more giants in Japan than there are in the U.S.?
No.
Okay.
I think the U.S. still has. I think the U.S. still probably has more giant bass, and that's between Southern California, Northern California, and probably Texas. I think those 3 states, the amount of bodies of there's probably in Southern California, there's probably Dixon, Jennings. There's maybe 3 or 4 lakes in Southern California that have a world record bass in it.
Okay.
It's impossible to catch. It's impossible.
Way too smart.
Smartest fish in the world.
Yeah.
Those fish, those Southern California fish, they're smarter than biwa fish. Crazily enough. I've seen it 1,000 times. I mean, they're small. They're tiny little lakes. And most of them you can't even put your boat on. You have to get a rental boat. So there's no cool graphs, no power poles, no nothing like that, right? Then it's super gin clear water, right? Like we're talking 20-foot visibility all the time. And there's a lot of guys that fish it because fishing is very popular in Southern California, right? So you add pressure, it's extremely clear water, and a small body of water. It's the smartest fish in the world. They've seen every single lure known to man.
Yeah.
Right. And they know it. They know what's real. They know it's. But the only reason why I think you can catch the world record in Japan on Lake Biwa, because the body of water is very large, and I think that helps. That there might be places that guys aren't fishing that have that fish, and it does have a lot of pressure. But I think the world record fish will sit in areas that aren't as pressured, or guys that aren't really thinking about.
You may have some weather elements too.
Weather elements could be
help,
huge,
right?
Yeah.
Whether it's wind or storm. I mean, it's a huge fucking place,
Right?
So,
Massive. Yeah.
I mean, it could get multiple foot waves crashing in no time versus Lake Dixon, even on a windy fucking day.
It ain't that
I don't
crazy.
think you're gonna get 1-footers,
Right. Which would help in getting
would
that
help,
fish
for sure.
And there's also techniques that I've talked to, the Japanese guys about that they don't really utilize. They don't like soft baits. That's a huge thing. They don't.
What does Japanese anglers don't like soft baits?
They
or
don't like
bass
soft baits.
don't like soft baits.
No, the Japanese angler doesn't like soft baits. They don't believe in them.
Why?
They'll try them, and they won't get immediate results. In their mind, they're like, the fish just follow it. They don't eat it, right? But I don't think that they're throwing at the right times, in the right places, the right speeds. I think that needs to be explored more.
So you think that's something that American anglers excel at?
I think much better.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because the American guys, they do like a soft bait bite. Mag draft, for example. I mean, look how popular mag draft is.
Right.
But the 10-inch mag draft or any mag draft, you don't really see a lot of mag draft fishing.
Yeah,
in
no,
Japan.
now that you've brought it up, I'm just thinking through my arsenal. You don't see the majority of big ones that I see in pages I follow and people that I keep track with. If it's a swim bait, it's a glide.
It's a glide or it's a hard bait.
It's some kind of hard bait.
Fast
or
reaction.
It's a big crankbait.
Yeah, something, right?
10XD, something like that, right? Hanging out of his face.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's weird how I just think that they haven't really cracked the code on what they need to do with the soft bait over there. And I think some of the biggest fish in the world, will come on a soft bait. I mean, granted, I know tons and tons of trophy hunters, and a lot of their personal bests have come on a hard bait, crazily enough. But I also know that when I talk to them, they're like, but truly more consistently, you'll catch bigger fish on a soft bait. So there's something to that. And I've also talked to them about, hey, why don't you downsize your hooks if the water's so clear, or downsize your line, because they will fish heavy line. They'll fish like 30-pound mono or copoly. And I'm like, that's really heavy. And then their hooks are huge.
Right.
And so there are small things where I'm like, I wonder if they changed this or applied this to their fishing, if they'd have better results. Because any body of water that's pressured, most of the time, everybody's kind of doing the same thing, right? There's not guys that are thinking slightly bit out of the box or overthinking it to get that next bite. So luckily enough, living here in Arizona, it's very similar to Biwa, where it's like,
fishing kind of sucks.
crap, I caught a bass today. Holy shit,
Right. Yeah.
And so that's why I feel I'm well prepared to go to Biwa to get my ass beat. But if I grind it hard enough, if I have the opportunity to catch a world record bass, I'm going to do it, right? Where here, if I grind my ass off, I might catch it like a 14, maybe a 15 if I get really lucky.
Right.
But I can't catch a world record bass out of this state, unfortunately. Yeah. And it would be cool to be able to chase that fish on Lake Biwa and then implement what I've learned in my fishing and see if it works over there. It might not work. It might be like, oh, they're right. They don't eat the soft bait because they just fall and look like, nope, that's fake as shit, right? Or it could be like, dude, lights out. And that's when I call you and CJ like, hey, I'm about to catch a world record on a fucking
Right, we'll
on
be there.
on a
We'll be
mag
there,
drive.
right,
I need
yeah.
you to film this shit.
Yeah.
Like, so there's small things that the Japanese, I'm like, wow, they're really smart on this, but they don't do this simple thing. It's very interesting to see that play out, and it's always fascinating. I'm like, man, you were smart enough to make this lure, but you're still running 3/0 hooks.
Right.
The hell are you doing? You're fishing North Lake, which is super clear,
Right.
and I'm just like, what are you guys doing? And so there's small things that I think is very fascinating. But one of the things when we were last in Japan, one of the things that we always ask some of the guys that we were talking about, which is kind of a good way to end this, is that bass fishing in Japan is dying because it's so hard. And every single person we've talked to, like, hey, how's bass fishing in Japan? It went from like, it's not good, it's dying.
Right.
And so we've talked about this, like, it can't die because that's what this store is. It's like what we love so much. And so it's insane to see that the fishing is that bad that a lot of the Japanese guys, they're just going to saltwater, or they're going to trout, or they're doing something wildly different because of the fishing is so hard.
Yeah.
And I feel like American guys don't know that yet. We haven't felt the effects just yet.
Yeah.
And it's a sad thing to see in here when you go to Japan and guys aren't like thrilled to talk about bass fishing. They're more thrilled to talk about sea bass and other things.
And I don't know what the answer is, right? And this is a conversation that you and I have been having for a couple years now.
Yeah.
But we've been having super in depth with some pretty major brands trying to figure out a solution, right? And if anybody listening to this is a JDM Tackle fan, then they're seeing some of their favorite brands transition out of bass and into other species.
Right. Yeah, I've seen a lot.
And that's not the COVID effect.
No.
Right? So the COVID effect would tell you, like, oh, just make something for everything. Like, oh, look, there's all these fishermen. Let's make some trout. Let's make some saltwater. Right? But that's not what's happening. What's happening is that bass fishing is decreasing.
Yes.
And it's much easier to go and have fun and have success in salt and in trout. And so a lot of these brands that are major bass brands, like Mega Bass, for instance, has been focused on saltwater for many years.
Yeah.
And focused on trout for many years. And now you're seeing brands like OSP starting to make saltwater baits. Depths starting to make saltwater baits. Gancraft making trout and saltwater baits. Like, everybody's starting to expand out because, they're getting to a point where they're almost like, holy shit. Like, when I talk to Japanese brands, when they form a company, companies are never really formed to sell. I don't know if you've noticed that, but nobody ever really creates a brand to sell in Japan. Companies are created to be companies forever. Right?
Yeah.
And in the U.S., a lot of companies are created just to sell, right? It's like grow, and then sell, right? And then cash in and move to the next thing, right?
Yeah.
So when they're looking at the long-term picture, they're looking at the next generation, and they're going, holy fuck, if this keeps going this way, like, we may not have any fucking bass, right? And I don't know, so, not to sound doom and gloom, but... a lot of guys on BWAF, for instance, are starting to secretly release the fish. Right. And, organizations are like, let's just let it go. Right. Which is why a lot of times if you watch like Japanese videos, like
you never see the release.
You never see the release.
Never.
Right.
Ever.
That's because it's literally illegal.
Yeah.
They can't do it. So funny fucking story. When we had that big depths wall in the beginning, right? We put a TV in the middle of the depths wall. Yeah. And Matt Pano, my buddy that imports depths from the USA, he sent me some videos that they had just made frog fishing some of the depths frogs, right?
Okay.
He's like, dude, you got to put these up there, but I'm just warning you, they're kind of graphic, right? So we throw these videos up, and you're watching these dudes, and they're fishing like those cool little canals and shit, right, from the shore.
Yeah.
Boom, they fucking get a 5-pounder, right? They fucking get on they're like, yeah, hell yeah. And they're traditional Japanese, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're holding the fish way out here.
Yeah.
And like, like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they take the frog out, they played it on the ground, and they literally took a brick and just fucking crushed its head. And it's on video. And you're just like, what?
That's crazy.
What just fucking happened?
Yeah.
Right? But they used to make videos where they would have to show the fish fucking dying.
Oh, really?
Right?
Wow.
So it's like this crazy thing. But, last year, Yamanashi Prefecture, like around Kawaguchi and stuff, started allowing catch and release.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and smallmouth.
Mm-hmm. Smallmouth are coming.
Right? So my favorite could be the fucking savior.
Well, it is strange how it only seems like it's biwa that you have to kill the fish, because Ikihara, I see release videos there. I see places, some other places that I've seen where guys are releasing fish, and it seems like Kawaguchi. I'm pretty sure I've seen the release videos there. I'm like, so it just seems to be that biwa, which is called the Mother Lake.
It's the Mother Lake, and it's the hub of all things.
Yes.
As far as bass fishing and innovation goes.
Yes.
All your main lure brands,
a lot of it was birthed
hubbed around this place.
Yeah.
Right? It's also, it's such a big body of water.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people that aren't familiar with Biwa, it's basically like a Lake Mead.
Yeah.
In Japan. Right?
Yeah, it's huge.
It's a very massive body of water.
Wide open,
right? Or like
too.
a Lake Okeechobee. In Japan. It's probably closer to an Okeechobee. It's kind of a big circle, like a big north side and a small south side that's bigger than any lake in Arizona. Right. So, but it's got tons. It's a very important place, a very significant place.
Very.
Right.
Yes.
But it's got all kinds of shit in it.
Oh, yeah.
That isn't native now. Things get farmed in there, like wakasagis.
Right.
For instance, I had no idea that wakasagi wasn't native.
Right. Crazy,
I
right?
just assumed like, hey, fucking wakasagi's, that's just a bait fish. And then, you start talking Japanese, like, fuck no, there's no wakasagi here 10 years ago.
Yeah.
10 years ago, it was all bluegill.
Yep.
Right? And that's why, if you go back a decade ago, most of the baits coming out of Japan were bluegill related.
Very, yes.
Right? And you fast forward to now, most of the baits coming out of Japan are wakasagi related. Like all those little eye motion baits and all those, smaller downsized stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because wakasagi is a non-native fish that's just, it's everywhere
Blew up.
now.
Yeah.
Right? So it's definitely like it's in the limelight. And I don't know what the answer is. And I don't know what the solution is.
Yeah.
We talked to our buddy Hideki,
Yes.
owner of Teckle.
Yep.
And he's fighting hard in Japan to eliminate bass fishing tournaments from Lake Biwa.
Right.
Because in the bass fishing tournaments, if you look at a local tournament here, for instance, right? Let's say you have 200 boats.
Yep.
Most of the time, you do like a drive-through weigh-in, right? Where you keep your fishing alive well till you get to the stage or whatever.
Yeah.
Even if it's pull up to the dock or beach it, then you
get a bag.
You get a bag, you fill it with water,
you throw
put
them
your
in there.
fish. If you saw some jerk off in line with 5 fish flopping in the bag with no water, suffocating and dying, you'd probably kick his ass.
Right. Yeah.
So imagine a tournament at Lake Biwa with 200 or 300 or 500 or 1,000 boats, like that one that we were there the last time, right?
Yeah.
And every angler has their fish in a dry bag with no water, with the fish suffocating.
Crazy.
It's thousands of bass a tournament.
Just
dead.
Gone. And they'll get 30-pound bags.
Right. Dead.
They'll get,
all of them.
just see you later.
Done.
Yeah.
Right? So you can only do that for so long.
Right.
Before there's nothing left, right? So it's a scary proposition.
Very.
Because if the trend continues down and companies that are historically amazing at making bass fishing lures stop seeing sales success in bass and start seeing huge success in saltwater, well, I mean, a company's not stupid. Right?
Yeah.
Like you're going to have to, your job is to pay your people and to keep the company going and to do things like, then you just transition to a different chapter of the brand.
That's what it is, yeah.
But I mean, saltwater anglers will be happy,
Oh, they're stoked.
right?
They're losing their mind.
but bass fishing anglers are going to be very fucking sad if this is
It
the
keeps
trend.
going this way. Yeah.
My hope, we saw a lot of this happen in Arizona too, but not for catch and kill, but Arizona back, rewind 20 years ago.
Yeah.
We never used to have striped bass in
Right.
Arizona,
Yep.
right? Striped bass were planted here,
Mm-hmm.
right, at Lake Powell to control shad population.
Right.
Terrible fucking idea. Killed the fucking lake.
Yeah.
They washed downstream to Lake Mead, killed that fucking lake.
Yeah.
Washed downstream Mojave, killed Mojave. Washed down, so on and so forth. Right?
Right.
Killed everything. Whole Colorado River chain.
Gone.
Ass.
See you
Done.
later. Yeah.
Right? Lake Pleasant fills up
Mm-hmm.
from the Colorado River. Stripers go in. Fucking basically
Done.
wipes the shit out of
Crazy.
you. Right? All of a sudden, these Colorado River lakes that never had populations of smallmouth,
Mm-hmm.
you start catching smallmouth, right? Like I remember when I was fishing tournaments a lot, we'd go to Lake Mead,
Yeah.
and Mead was like a regular fucking derby.
It's classic.
Right?
Yeah.
You would go and you'd catch, 10 pounds a day on Mead is
That's
pretty
huge.
fucking amazing, right?
Which is
right. So 10 pounds a day was literally like 5 23-inch largemouth.
right.
Right, that weighed 2 pounds apiece. Like you wanted to fucking kill them. You felt so bad for them. They wanted to be 6-pounders so
Yeah.
bad, right?
Yep.
But they hadn't eaten anything in 4 months.
They finally
right?
ate your.
But through the process, you'd catch 7 or 8 like 3/4 pound smallmouth,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, it's cool. Someday it'd be cool if smallmouth came. And all of a sudden, like, you start to see like, oh fuck, that guy actually weighed in a smallmouth in his bag. Oh shit, that guy just weighed in 2 smallmouth in his bag, all the way to the point where all of a sudden now they're dominating.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
That's what you win on now,
Yeah.
right? And they've taken these lakes
Mhm.
that were complete ass,
Yeah.
like gone,
Bad.
and they're like, fuck it, we'll run with these stripers,
Mhm.
right? Largemouth going to be some pussy ass bitches. We'll go out there and run with these stripers,
Yep.
right? And they can hang,
Yeah.
and they can maintain, and now we have this amazing fishery, but not just for smallmouth.
Right. The largemouth.
Now the largemouth are thriving too because they don't have to go out and run with them.
Right. Yeah.
Smallmouth are like the little fucking like they're gonna go out there and beat the shit out of them while the mob bosses just sit back and like, yeah, you guys go run out of the stripers, right? You send me a bluegill every once in a while. I want to sit under this fucking bush. Oh yeah, cool. There's a bluegill.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Thanks. Right. So, going back to like 2015, 2016, I think it's probably like 2017 or 2018. I was in Fukushima and I was hanging out with the dudes from Monka.
Yep.
Right. And they're teaching me some crawler tricks and how like that's a whole other fucking trend in Japan that's just huge, right? Crawlers.
Yeah.
We were talking about stuff, and at the time there was one lake right by there that had smallmouth
Oh, yeah.
in it. And they weren't big. Like a 3-pounder at the time was big.
Right.
But they were really excited because it was a smallmouth lake.
Right.
And it was an okay lake, but it's kind of muddy water, not great size, right? All the way fast forward to now, and there's fucking smallmouth everywhere all of a sudden.
Yeah. All of a
Right?
sudden.
They're in rivers, they're in streams. Like, look, I don't know how this shit fucking happens.
No. Magic.
Magic. Right. Magic, right? But I'm hoping that somehow the smallmouth potentially could be the saving grace of this, right?
Of all of it, really.
Yeah, because, look, as much as BWA is important, it is what it is.
Right.
It's not like anybody's going to go to the emperor and be like,
Hey, bro.
hey, yo,
Could you stop?
guy.
Hey,
I mean,
could you just
come on.
stop?
Yeah, we want to catch
you
some
be cool?
largemouth.
Yeah, like,
bro,
could you be cool?
relax. Right? I mean, come on, man.
It's crazy.
Right. So it's the only thing I can see.
Smallmouth taking off.
Right.
Yeah.
I just kind of getting back to a little bit of what we talked about the last episode too is there also has to be a way to have fun without catching fish. And I think this is something that's always fascinated me with Japanese anglers is we catch a shit ton of fish here.
Right.
To the point where a lot of times we take a lot of things for granted.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
catch a little 10-inch and you're like, huh, little fucker. Right? A lot of times you just
Shake it off. Yeah.
Right? And it bounces off the side of the boat back and you're like, hey, you dumb fucking fish. Right? And we take a lot of this for granted because there's so much opportunity for fish. There's so many bass, right? That, you go over there and there's so few bass that every catch
Oh, it's stoked.
is like a
amazing.
championship.
God,
Right?
It's amazing.
I mean, even a little one.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I caught like a 1 pounder.
Yeah.
I caught it on a Deep X 100.
Yeah.
We were cranking this little like riprap thing. And I'm like, oh, I got one. And they were freaking out, right? And they're like, oh my God, mega bass, right? They're like, oh, he's got one. Like, holy shit, right? And I'm like, dude, it's just a little one.
Yeah.
I'm just like plowing this motherfucker in. Like, this is a 1 pounder, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they were so excited.
Right.
Because it's that hard.
It is.
But it wasn't necessarily just excitement because we caught a fish. It was a pure appreciation for the whole process.
1,000%.
It was
Yeah.
looking at this beautiful creature, appreciating this
Yeah.
beautiful creature, thinking through how hard it was for us to come in contact with that.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
All the obstacles.
Yeah. The lure, the rod, the cast, the boat angle, everything played a role.
Yep.
And it was all appreciated in that moment. Right? And I've learned a lot by watching Japanese anglers fish and the amount of appreciation
Yeah.
that they have for the entire
Everything,
process.
dude. I mean, you look at their gear.
Right.
Dude, they treat their gear like Ferraris.
Right.
And it's
Well,
like,
not necessarily Toshi.
he's an exception.
Well, his gear's nice, but the shit that he gave me, we duct taped a few times. Yeah, there's an asterisk.
Asterisk.
My favorite was when he was ripping the jerkbait. You could hear the guy.
Right. Tick, 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 tick. He's like, just put more duct tape on it. Yeah.
Sticking them to it.
Right. He didn't care.
He didn't care. But for the most part, I mean, you know, we've gone into like the tackle barriers and some of the other like used tackle shops, and you're looking at this stuff. It's like, this has never been used.
Right.
Not a single time. I
Right.
swear. At least that's what it looks like.
Right.
And
Not a hook rash on it.
nothing,
Not
dude.
a piece of rust.
And
on
you're
it.
just like, they really take care and appreciate every little thing that comes down to bass fishing, which definitely not here, man. But
yeah. It's a deep connection.
very.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's a deep connection to the whole process. It's a deep connection to the tackle.
Yes.
It's a connection to the lake. It's a connection to nature. It's a connection to the people around. It's a connection to the process. And I think, I think we can learn a lot from that because it is so easy to take things for granted that's at a surplus.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times we lose sight of the overall picture. And, not to sound too, hippie, but, that pulse of the earth, right, is a big thing in fishing. I mean, if we're a fisherman, we love the outdoors.
Right. We have to.
We love the sun. We love the rain. We hate the fucking wind. Right? We love the birds.
Right.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
these are things that we're into, and this is why we're connected to it.
Right.
And so often we forget all those things.
Yeah.
And we take it for granted, right? I find especially when we're in like go mode, like tournament mode sometimes,
Right. Yeah.
or bass boat mode, right? Like sometimes when you start scaling it back and you take the aluminum out, or you fish from shore, or you do things like you recenter yourself and you remind yourself like, like I just breathed again. I
Right.
forgot about
This is what it's all about.
Right, I forgot
Really.
about breathing a little bit,
Yeah.
right? And so I think if American anglers can learn anything from Japanese anglers, it's to appreciate the entire process
Right.
and how important every little piece plays to the whole puzzle, right?
Yeah.
And to really cherish what we have
Over here. Yeah.
because it's incredibly special. I mean, America has something that's so fucking special, and that's amazing bass fishing.
Yes. Yeah.
And, fortunately, we have some states that really understand that.
right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like Texas,
Oh,
for
yeah.
instance, right? I mean,
They're on it, dude.
fuck, I would kill to have Texas
Share Lunker
Fish and
program,
Wildlife
right.
come and just
Bro, they're serious.
eliminate Arizona Game and Fish and
Yeah.
just start over from
Oh.
scratch, right? Let's just erase them,
Right.
if it's possible. I'd like to send Arizona Game and Fish somewhere. Mexico. That would be a good place for them. Let's send them down there. No offense, Mexico. You're going to be fucked if they get there. You're gonna have some stupid ass trout
Yeah.
in no time.
Kill all the tilapia for eating.
Oh my god! But you know what I'm saying? Like there are some places that get it,
Right.
right? I wish every place got it and understood how special it is. Because really, when you think of the world, like there's certainly bass in almost every country now.
Right.
We have something that's incredibly unique, and that's just a diverse, amazing country that's just full of bass that a lot of times we take for granted. Getting back to what you said in the beginning, farm ponds, big lakes, small lakes, the rivers, like
everywhere, dude.
It's all got fucking fish, right? And I mean, even that shitty ass fucking urban lake that took me 2 years to catch a bass,
It's got bass in it
bro.
somehow.
In reality,
Yeah.
that's just like a normal fucking lake in Japan.
Right.
I'm calling it a shitty fucking lake, but we've talked to some of these guys that have literally, like when we talked to Toshi, right? He started bass fishing and caught his first bass 7 years after he started.
There's no way.
7 years.
There's no way.
Yeah.
Went straight into tournament fishing.
And then after he caught that one fish, he's like, I'm fucking good. I'm going to be a tournament angler.
And he wasn't wrong.
And he wasn't wrong. he was amazing.
That's fucked up.
right. But
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, I'm kind of joking about taking 2 years to catch a bass because
Right.
the place is so shitty.
Yeah.
But that's just fucking normal in a lot of places.
Yeah.
So we take so much stuff
Right.
for granted.
1,000%.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it's an amazing diversity between the two countries.
1,000%.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot we can learn from Japan. There's a lot Japanese anglers can learn from us.
Yeah.
It's exciting to see the blending of the two come together.
Yeah. We've
Right?
seen it more and more.
I think as the world continues to shrink, like I feel like 20 years ago, Japan seemed like it was
So far
the
away.
other, like you literally had to dig a tunnel through the whole Earth, go through hell, come back out the other side, the
And
bottom
boom,
of Earth, and
there's
then
Japan.
boom, there's Japan.
Yeah.
Right? Like it just seemed like this whole other universe, right? Might
Yeah.
as well have been on Jupiter.
Right.
Right? And now, you know, the world's so small with Instagram and YouTube and planes. Right? Right? That, you know, you realize like, dude, we're all in this together.
Right.
And the crazy shit is that, you know, the Japanese brands, they need American fishing.
They have to. Yeah.
And American brands need Japanese fishing. And so at the end of the day, it's all interfucking-twined.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So finding that mutual ground and that common respect and trying to learn whatever we can from each other to have fun
Right.
and appreciate everything is
Yeah.
going to be so important going forward, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be really cool having this platform to talk to different anglers and share experiences from both places.
Right.
Both
Yeah.
from Japan when we go and here from the US.
Yep.
And hopefully share across both.
Right.
You know, I would love Japanese anglers to watch some of this, and I would love American anglers to watch some
Their
of
stuff.
you know the
Yeah.
Japan stuff, because there's so much learning we can do.
There is.
And the more we learn from each other, the more we realize we're exactly the same people.
Yeah.
Right? We eat different shit when we go fishing.
Yeah. But
But-
other than that.
That's pretty. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this.
Uh-oh.
Whether Jeff's in Japan or Jeff's in the United States, he
Yeah.
doesn't eat anything. In fact, the last time we went fishing in Japan, all the Japanese people literally looked at him and said,
You're going to die.
"You're going to die.
You're going to die. Yeah, you'll see it. It's going to happen.
You are going to
You're going to die.
die."
And we're going
If
on
you
a
don't eat
5-hour fishing trip in Tokyo Bay
Well-
with Disneyland in eyesight.
Yeah, I spent like $100 at 7-Eleven. I had sandwiches and soups.
It was
and snacks,
unbelievable,
and
dude.
I had like a whole Yeti for
And
my 5-hour adventure. And by the way, we had lunch before we went out.
Oh, nice.
We literally.
And Jeff's like, "No, dude, I'm good. I'm full." And they're like,
I'll-
"Jeff, you are going to."
I just
die."
grabbed like a sandwich. They're like, no, you need to grab this and that. I'm like, we just ate, bro.
Well, if you're looking for a light snack, I hear hot dog buns are
Hot dog buns, the Toshi special. Yeah,
wine and a hot dog bun. You'll
yeah.
get that.
This is funny. Did we ever tell you about the hot dog buns?
No.
Oh, it's such a great story.
CJ and I flew over to Tennessee, and we met up with Toshi, and we went and fucked around with him for a couple days,
Yep.
right? And filmed some shit. And he's like, let's go to Walmart and get some food. So we have food for the week. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, cool, right?
Makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So we go to Walmart and, I'm grabbing all the normal things like fucking, Uncrustables and
Right.
Doritos
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
normal shit that you eat in the
Right.
boat. And he's fascinated. He's like, this is what you guys eat? It's like, yeah, what do you eat? He goes, oh, I'll go get it. And he comes back and he puts a package of hot dog buns in the cart.
Okay.
Right? Just like straight white, like ballpark hot dog
Right.
buns.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, cool. Do we need to get hot dogs? He goes, hot dogs? And he goes, yeah, hot dogs for the bread? He goes, oh, no, just bread. I'm like, okay.
But he'll smoke like a Jimmy Dean sandwich in the morning. It's
Right.
so funny.
So, you know what I mean? Yeah, he's the asterisk again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not Japanese.
I love that guy.
He's not Japanese.
Yeah.
He's
He's very Americanized though at this point, right? Yeah. But so it was such a
God.
funny moment.
Holy crap.
Yeah. That's all it takes. It's all it takes. Yeah.
Holy crap.
But
Well,
Geoff, once again,
this was good.
thank you.
We have so much to talk about. I was going through my head. I'm like, oh, I want to go down this rabbit hole. Ooh,
Well,
I
yeah,
wanna go down this
I'm looking
rabbit
at the
hole.
clock over there. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, I could literally stay here for like 24 hours.
I know.
And just keep talking about
Yep.
different things. So let's just keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
Actually, I think probably our next chance to do this is we're going to be in Japan.
Yeah.
We're
and
both,
Mihon.
you're going to Michigan
Mihon.
and you're going to meet up with Hideki.
Mr.
and
Hideki-san.
do some
Filming. Yep.
some topwater filming, which
Yep.
should be super dope. You're a big fan of Michigan.
I like the transportation systems. That they,
Do you? So, Geoff and I were making annual pilgrimages out to Michigan until I think the last year. And then I think that was the end of that, which was I flew out to meet Megabass and you couldn't come because you didn't get your NDA in to Megabass. I did.
They didn't even send one.
I did an NDA to see their top secret lure
They didn't even send me one.
and you didn't get to, so you couldn't come
Couldn't come.
the first day.
Yeah.
So you had to fly out the second day.
Yeah. Yep.
And then you landed in Flint.
Uh-huh. Beautiful Flint.
We were
by
up
the
in
way.
northern Michigan. We were like almost UP.
Mm.
Your
Beautiful
your
Flint,
rental car
Michigan.
didn't happen.
They were just like, you're black? Ain't happening.
Is that what it was?
100%
I
it was.
see.
I'm in Flint, Michigan. What else do you think it was?
Well, maybe they didn't have a rental car.
There's no shot. I had a reservation.
Well, you do look like a bum. You should have been like, bro, I drink beer. They would be like, oh yeah, hell yeah, here's a rental car.
Drink beer and like country music. You make car.
Yeah.
What clothes were you wearing? Were you wearing somebody underground clothes?
I don't remember what I was wearing.
I'd say probably a 90% chance.
I love Michigan shirt. Would have been great.
So long story short, he had to take the Greyhound. Well, first he called us. He's like, bro, I'm having some problems at the airport. They're refusing to rent me a car.
And I call you in the middle of a wide open smallmouth bite.
Dude, I had just released like my 30-second 5-pounder. And I'm like, damn, dude, that sucks. See
That's
you later.
literally what he said. He's like, figure it out. We ain't coming down.
I don't know what to tell you, Uber or something, but I'm going to get out the phone now because it's wide fucking open. I'll see you at dinner if you make it up
And
here.
so I'm sick to my stomach. So I'm calling Ubers left and right, and then they show up, and first thing I'm like, you see where I'm going? They're like, no, and then they look and they're like, oh, yeah, I can't take you, and then they just leave, and then they charge me for whatever that was because they showed up. So I'm like, I can't keep doing this. So eventually I'm like, well, what's the next best option? A Greyhound. So then I look up the times, and I'm like, oh, there's one coming in like an hour and a half. Dope. So I take an Uber from the airport to the Greyhound place, drops me off. There's crackheads outside, which is just great. And I get
They
on
have
the
I Love Michigan shirts on.
They all, yes.
Always swimming underground.
And then after what felt like an eternity, we finally get onto the Greyhound. And I think at this point it was probably Oh my god.
Maybe like 2 or 3 in the afternoon
Yeah,
by the time you got on
something
that
like that.
motherfucker.
Yeah, it was like 2 or 3, and then it was like a 2.5 hour. Maybe it was longer than
No,
that.
it was like 9 o'clock by the time you made it. It was like
That's
an
right.
all day fucking.
I think it was
ordeal
like
for
a
you.
4 or 4.5 hour Greyhound, because it stops at every like little city or whatever, and then you wait there for like 10 minutes, and then you go to the next one, and then you go to the next one, and then the bus. There was a detour, so that was an extra 30 minutes, and then they stopped to get food. That was another 30 minutes. I'm just sitting on this bus, and there was, when I first got on the bus, there was I think 7 people, and then by the time I got to Alpino, I think I was the last of like one other person on it.
I just remember I went to pick him up
At a Walmart.
because of course the bus
parking
stops at a
lot.
Walmart, right? So he's like, bro, I'm at the Walmart. I'm like, cool, I'll be right there, right? I picked him up, dude. I had the biggest fucking smile on my face. I never caught.
I knew it was bad because he didn't say nothing when
I
I
was
got in
like
the car.
ear to ear, but I didn't want to rub it in, but I couldn't fucking hide it, right? And Jeff just looked like, I mean, he looked the most miserable I've ever seen him. And Jeff looks miserable a lot, so I've seen a lot of miserable looks on Jeff, right? Especially hanging out around me, right? It's like, fuck, this guy's gonna drink again,
Dude.
right?
The first fucking thing he says is, "We fucked him up," and I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Dude, I've never had a smallmouth day like that in my entire life of living." I said, "What the fuck do you mean?" And then him and Buttermore were just fucking giggling their asses off, and I'm like, "You've got to be shitting me." And he's like, "No, it was unbelievable. I probably had multiple 25-pound bags of smallmouth today." I'm like, "Multiple?" He's like, "Yeah, it was just dumb." And then we went to dinner, and I had some stale ass fucking, I forgot what the fuck it was. And I was like, "You're telling me I missed that fucking shit?" And then the next day is the day I fall into Lake Huron.
Yeah, loses his camera, loses
My
his
phone.
it loses everything,
lose
falls into
everything.
the lake, almost dies.
Oh my god.
And then we went home like
and then
2
the next
days
day
later.
we went home.
Jesus.
So I'm glad you're going back. I hope you have a better trip this time.
Jesus Christ.
But we'll rendezvous in Tokyo. How about that? Well, actually, we'll rendezvous in Akita.
No.
Maybe
Tokyo.
Akita, maybe in Tokyo. I don't know. We have to figure this out. But we'll be. We should do this again in Japan.
All right.
Yeah, over
should
some
be good.
sushi.
Sushi.
Maybe we'll get some Orion.
Yeah, we'll fly in.
Yeah.
Or fly.
Yeah.
The
I don't think-
flying dragon.
I don't think the Greyhound goes there.
No. Fuck.
The only person that's ever taken a Greyhound to Japan is Griff.
That's right. 'Cause he took the boat version.
Griff took a boat that took 30 days.
I thought it was 40 days.
Was it 40
I
days?
thought it was 40 days.
Took 40 days.
No.
No, because he was in the military,
And they,
and they're like, here, get on this boat. And so he got on the boat, and 40 days later, he landed
lands
in Japan.
and he's getting yelled at by Japanese people to go back home. And he's like, "I took 40 days to get here. I'm not going
I'm
back."
chilling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck you.
You're stuck with me, motherfuckers. And I think he was there for like 12 years until
Yeah.
the military's like, bro,
Force. You got to
you need to go the fuck home.
Yeah.
Like, you
You're
can't
causing
live
too
here
much
forever.
ruckus.
Yeah. That's funny shit. All right, Jeff.
Peace out. All right.
Thank
another
you.
one down there.
Peace, my friends. Until the next one.
I think all of these are going to be good.
Well, I'm doing a great job.
I know you are.
Yeah, try
as
to keep
always.
up.
All right.
CJ,
CJ.
good job. Peace, my friends. Till the next one.
Adios.
Whoosh.